Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Viewers, once again we have to talk about the regional issues, not Pakistan's politics. We are going to talk about geopolitics today because a lot seems to be happening. We know that in the US has actually decided in Afghanistan to withdraw as soon as possible, and there is a ticking clock going on. On one side, it seems that while this withdrawal will take place, it seems that the Taliban are resurgent and their influence keeps on increasing. We are seeing a lot of reports coming from Western media that might be the case, and there is a possibility that they might overwhelm Afghanistan the moment the foreign troops actually leave. There's one aspect which is very important. There are other developments in the region from Iran, where a new government is taking over, and because of that, and also because of the change in Washington, there seems to be negotiations going on. The third thing is India, where of course we have seen some developments as well. Narendra Modi has decided to meet with Kashmiri leaders. So a lot of things are happening. And in this context, the Prime Minister of Pakistan actually gave an interview to Axios, which is a program that airs on HBO. And in that, he was very clear that Pakistan is not going to offer any bases. Pakistan will be a partner in peace, not in war. And there were, of course, pros and cons that were discussed of each policy. So today, what we are going to do is we are going to talk about Afghanistan, Pakistan-Afghanistan relationship, the future of the region, how it develops, and then there is a broader context because we keep on reading in the Western think tank reports that the US decided that China is going to be the biggest challenge. So Pakistan has a strategic alliance with China, and of course Pakistan and US have been very close in the past. Pakistan helped the US in turning the tide of two important regional and global trends. So how exactly is it going to influence Pakistan? We are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues, I'm going to introduce a panel that joins me in the studio and on Skype. But before we do, there's a report. Let us watch that, and then we are going to discuss.
Pakistan has focused recently on resetting its foreign policy, one example being Imran Khan's recent visit to Saudi Arabia. Attempts to improve ties with US need to be examined in that context. In an opinion piece recently published in the Washington Post, PM Imran Khan said that if Pakistan were to agree to host US bases from which to bomb Afghanistan and an Afghan civil war ensued, Pakistan would be targeted for revenge by terrorists yet again. Pakistan simply cannot afford this. The country has already paid too heavy a price. He also highlighted that if the United States, with the most powerful military machine in history, couldn't win the war from inside Afghanistan after 20 years, how would America do it from bases in Pakistan? The war on terror internally displaced half the population of the tribal areas, including 1 million people in North Khuzestan alone, with billions of dollars of damage done and whole villages destroyed. The collateral damage to civilians in that incursion led to suicide attacks against the Pakistani army, killing many more soldiers than the United States lost in Afghanistan and Iraq combined, while breeding even more terrorism against Pakistan. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa alone, 500 Pakistani policemen were murdered. There are more than 3 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan, and if there is further civil war instead of a political settlement, there will be many more refugees. PM Imran Khan said that he believes promoting economic connectivity and regional trade is the key to lasting peace and security in Afghanistan, and further military action will be futile. If the responsibility is shared, Afghanistan, once synonymous with the great game and regional rivalries, could instead emerge as a model of regional cooperation.
Right, you have seen the report. Now let me come to the studio and introduce the panelists we have got. In the studio, I'm joined by Ambassador Asad Tutani Sahab, who is a career diplomat, also writes very well and regularly. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Yasir Janjua Saab, security analyst, expert on national security affairs, also joins us on in the studio. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Rahimullah Yusuf Zai Saab, who is a senior journalist and institution in himself, also an Afghan affairs expert, joins us on Skype. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Anwar Iqbal Saab, again another institution, senior journalist based in Washington DC, also joins us on Skype. There must be some reason why I cannot see their pictures right now. I'm sure that if they haven't joined, they will very soon. Actually, they are with us. Anwar Iqbal Saab, thank you very much, sir, for joining us as well. Let me start with the studio. Asad Totani Saab, we know there is a date, a cut-off date, and the US is going to withdraw. What becomes of this region after that date?
Well, much before that cut-off date, I think already there are certain signals emanating from Afghanistan. You yourself have said it in the report about Taliban's advances. And then there is a stalemate already which is going on since last year. Initially about the release of 5,000 Taliban, which delayed the dialogue process for almost 6 months. And subsequently, when dialogue started on 12th of September last year, so it was moving with a snail's pace. So nothing much has been achieved except that in December, the two sides could agree on the procedure of the dialogue. They have I mean, almost the agenda as well, perhaps. But whatever you can see from the beginning of this year, especially when Joe Biden administration took over, there have been movement, I mean, on at least as far as cut-off date is concerned from the American side. But there seems to be a kind of an understanding which may not have been said it in public. And we don't know about the annexes which were signed between the Taliban and the Trump administration, whether how they are going to go about it. But the signal is that Afghan Air Force is almost grounded because of lack of spares or for certain repairs.
Right.
So it means what? It means that there will be a so-called playing field, level playing field between the Afghan forces and the Taliban.
Right.
So this is how they are. And so far, I think more than 50 districts have directly fallen to the Taliban. So things are becoming clear. And it is purely my personal view that maybe Americans have tacitly given consent to the future takeover of the Taliban.
Right, that is important. Let me bring in Yasir Janjua Saab. Yasir Janjua Saab, when we were talking about this cut-off date, a question that was coming to my mind, and let me paraphrase a dialogue in the British series, Yes Minister. Is this date finally final? Or there is a possibility of some kind of leeway or some kind of renegotiating?
Well, as far as the date is concerned, US administration has been very particular that they wanted to follow the deadline. Okay. In fact, the date set is officially notified or publicly known as 11th of September.
Yeah.
However, the US want to do actually much before that. And they probably want to do it in July. Okay. And off camera, when we were talking about, you were talking about what are the reasons for Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit being cancelled. One of the reasons, we are also very keenly observing these events in the region is the Prime Minister Imran Khan wants to keep a complete vision of what is going on. Because
which visit has been cancelled? I'm sorry.
The UK Prime Minister of Britain invited Prime Minister Imran Khan to the UK, which was scheduled for the first week of July.
So it has been rescheduled, right? Not cancelled.
It's been postponed as of now, as we know.
I just heard the government's spokesman. They said rescheduled.
Yeah. Well, the rescheduled or postponed. So because it's very important what's going on in the region, because the Americans unofficially have been saying that probably they want to leave by the mid of July, you know, rather than the deadline of September.
Why so?
Because they're seeing that any delay in doing this is causing more harm than good to them.
Okay.
Because they are now being blamed. There's already a civil war has almost already started in Afghanistan.
Okay.
As Ambassador Saab was saying,
it never went away. Actually, Afghan Taliban were always fighting with the Afghan government.
Yes. The good thing is they're not yet fighting, or they're not firing at the American or the Allied troops.
Yeah, because of the agreement.
Yeah. They are only targeting the Afghan army or the law enforcement agents, local law enforcement. Although there's a mass exodus, Afghan army soldiers are joining the Taliban ranks and surrendering to them in hundreds.
Right.
So it's very important for the US to leave as soon as possible so that they don't get the blame. Oh, you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And you might also know that Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah are flying to the US to go and meet Joe Biden.
Right.
Because they're saying, what are you leaving us with? Because the Americans are actually leaving without an agreement.
Right.
There's no...
And in coming days, we are going to see what exactly happens. Of course, they might want to leave as soon as possible, but perhaps they are 20 years already late in doing so. Let me bring in Rahimullah Yousafzai Saab, who joins us on Skype. Rahimullah Yousafzai Saab, we are talking about the state of affairs in Afghanistan, how it is going to impact Pakistan and the region, especially post-US withdrawal. What do you see happening in coming days, sir?
I think already a lot is happening. As you can see, the Americans started leaving on 1st of May, and since then there has been a Taliban offensive. I will not call it an offensive because, the Afghan forces are surrendering and fleeing. And, there is no real fighting in much of the area. So, the Americans actually, may be thinking what to do next. And I think this will be decided when Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah meet President Biden in Washington on 25th of June. But because the Americans have to do something. They built this government, they installed this government, and now when they are leaving, everything is falling apart. So what can the Americans do and what will they do? That is very important. There have been some reports in the US media that maybe they will intervene with airstrikes or drone attacks. But I think earlier they were saying they will only do so in case there is a threat of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan's territory and targeting the US or its allies. But now they are saying they may intervene if big cities like Kabul, are under threat. So that is something new we will have to see. But I think that Taliban also are not, going to capture big cities at this stage. They are surrounding, they are besieging the cities, but they may wait because they will need a lot of manpower to run the cities. So that is also important about the next stages of the conflict. And if that happens, if there is more fighting, so then Pakistan will be affected, the region will be affected, more refugees, more weapons, more drugs, and a lot of bloodshed.
Right. Rahimullah Yousafzai Saab, I'm glad that you actually brought up Kabul security, because recently we heard that perhaps Turkey is going to actually play a role, especially when it comes to the airport security and safety of the city. Can you add on that, sir? Can you actually update on that as well?
I think President Erdogan offered to provide security to the Kabul International Airport, which is called Hamid Karzai Airport, but it was conditional. He wanted military and economic assistance from the US and other NATO members. Turkey is also part of NATO. So that was, his condition. But then suddenly, surprisingly, he added the name of Pakistan and Hungary, along with Turkey, who will provide security to Kabul airport. And Pakistan's foreign ministry said they are not aware of it. So I don't know whether Erdogan made this proposal on his own or he took Pakistan for granted. Because, how can Pakistan do that? Pakistan will never send its forces to protect the Kabul airport. If Turkey wants some logistic support in Pakistan, that could be discussed. But I think even Turkey may not finally eventually agree to provide security to Kabul airport, because when all the NATO member countries' forces are leaving, how can Turkey stay back? And Taliban have already reacted very angrily to Turkey's statement. So I believe Turkey and Erdogan will have to rethink about it, whether it is feasible, possible to provide security at the Kabul airport. But they want to secure, America and its allies want to secure the Kabul airport in case they have to pull out their diplomats. In case they have to pull out, say, leading members of the Afghan government and the other diplomats from other countries, if Taliban march on Kabul. So that is the purpose, I think.
Let me bring in Anwar Iqbal Sahab as well. Anwar Iqbal Sahab, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Let me ask you about perceptions in Washington DC. I understand that Ashraf Ghani Sahab and Abdullah are going to go to Washington and they are going to meet the US President. But at this moment, does it seem to be this deadline seem to be something set in stone? Or there is a possibility of renegotiating the date?
So far, the Americans seem adamant to stick to the deadline. They actually, if you believe the US media like the New York Times and Washington Post, they say that the withdrawal may complete by 15th of July or early August, so before September 11th. So far it seems that the Americans are determined to withdraw their forces, but of course this was a commitment, it was a one-sided commitment. The agreement was with the Trump administration, which Biden said he will honor. So if there is some sort of an international demand or an arrangement or something urging the Americans to stay longer, they might consider it, but it seems very unlikely. First of all, I think there's not going to be any international appeal for the Americans to stay longer. And number two, there is actually, you must understand that the Afghan war was never a very popular war in the United States. Most Americans used to say that this is a country whose name we cannot even pronounce, and why are our sons and daughters, why are they dying in that country? And now it has become even first it was not popular, but now it is a very unpopular war. Americans don't want to have anything to do with Afghanistan. So it will be very difficult for any American administrations to stay there much longer. I think they will leave by September 11, if not before.
Right. Two more quick observations regarding the Prime Minister's interview to HBO, and how did it play in the US? Or anybody even notice what exactly is Pakistan's position? Secondly, when it comes to Afghanistan, if things go south, is there a plan B? Anwar Iqbal sir.
Prime Minister's interview, yes, actually it has been noticed, and several US media outlets have written about it. But mostly focusing on his statement that Pakistan will not offer any basis to American forces, and Pakistan will not allow the CIA to have presence in the tribal areas, and that is something that is being highlighted. And there was actually a discussion on the National Public Radio, NPR, which is the largest radio network, and there was this discussion yesterday discussing Pakistan's position on this issue. So Americans would very much want to have some sort of support from Pakistan, not just moral support, not just sort of airlifting, but they would like to have some presence somewhere in Pakistan, which they are now getting convinced is very unlikely. And that is why, as Remullah was saying, and as you also mentioned, the US media also have started indicating the possibility of involving Turkey, because here the speculations are that if Turkey gets involved, when Turkey seeks presence in Pakistan, then it will be easier for Pakistan to accept that demand, and then the Turkey's presence can be used by the Americans to have a closer presence in the region. But as Rahimullah Saab said, I think even Turkey will not make that mistake. Guarding the airport in Kabul will be very difficult, either for the Turks or the Pakistanis. Of course, Pakistan sending its troops is out of question. Pakistan will never send its troops, as India never did. Although Americans did use a lot of pressure on India to make them send some troops, but then just totally refused. Pakistan will do the same. So ultimately, I think Americans may end up having some American and NATO troops. U.S. especially, there was a report in this country. You have certain newspapers that are published for the American armed forces only, like the Military Times, Stars and Stripes, and those newspapers did do a story saying that American special forces may end up. They didn't say that they will. They say may end up protecting the airport.
Right, that's quite intriguing. Let me come back to the studio. Asif Dotari Saab, on one side, the US is withdrawing from Afghanistan. Then we keep on reading that it wants bases in the neighboring countries, maybe Pakistan or Central Asia or any other country. The question is, if you are leaving, why can't you have permanent bases within Afghanistan if you want to actually do something about it? Why actually approach the matter so indirectly?
You are right. I mean, in fact, the intriguing part of this whole exercise is that what Americans could not achieve in 20 years in Afghanistan, what they are going to achieve by getting bases in the neighborhood, and how effective that is going to be.
Yeah.
But if a demand is raised on Pakistan, then it is more intriguing. Reason being that there is a consensus in the region, in the immediate neighborhood of Afghanistan, that American troops should leave. And Iran, Russia, China are on the same page, and so is Pakistan tacitly. So with that, I think Americans want to kill two birds with single stone. Let's say if Pakistan agrees, then in that case, I think there'll be bad blood between Pakistan and Taliban. And then I think Chinese and Russians and others, they are Iranians, they'll also get annoyed with Pakistan. So I think we should not fall into that one. And the most, I mean, political as well as legal question comes is that whatever cooperation we have had with the US-led ISAF and then NATO, that was under the UN Security Council resolutions 1368 and 1373. And those were under Chapter 7. And under that, whether you liked it or not, the member states were bound to extend help. That's why we have had the GLOCs and ALOCs. And those continued till December 2014, when ISAF mandate ended. And now it is actually the bilateral security agreement between the US and Afghan governments. In fact, when President Ashraf Ghani came, so this agreement was signed. At the fag end of his tenure, President Karzai refused to sign the BSA.
I remember, for months it kept
so he refused because he was in any case leaving. So he wanted to leave a legacy that he could withstood the American pressure. But now with Ashraf Ghani, it is a bilateral security agreement under which the US and NATO troops cannot be tried in the Afghan courts. That was the basic reason for it. Now Americans are leaving, so only they are, I think, playing with the region, because when you look at President Biden's 14th April statement, when he announced about the withdrawal of the American troops from Afghanistan, in that very statement, he said, while we may be withdrawing from Afghanistan, we will remain engaged with Afghanistan. But at the same time, he also, in fact, directly and bluntly said, now our competition would be with China.
Okay.
So we should make no mistakes, and we should be, I mean, and American intentions are quite clear. So why we should not do that is, I have listed you the reasons, but at the same time, if the Americans insist, so I think my view is that since we supported the American move earlier after the 9/11, it was under the UN Security Council resolutions. If there is an international consensus about the basis or about that, then I think that is the way out. That we can tell them that, well, we in fact supported it because Pakistan was under pressure on sending their troops to Iraq, which Pakistan refused on the basis that the war on Afghanistan was a war of a necessity. But the war in Iraq was the war of a choice.
Right. But you're talking about UNSC consensus. In Punjabi they say jawabi samjhiye. That means that it is refusal by other means, right?
Fine.
Because you are not going to get that consensus this day. Let me actually bring back Yasir Janjua Saab. Yasir Janjua Saab, do you think that there is a possibility if the US cannot find its feet in the region, especially when it comes to Pakistan, that Turkey might actually compensate, and that some kind of arrangement with Turkey might actually work for all?
Look, because Turkey is a member of NATO, the US has been trying to rally in the Turks to fill in the gap, because they think being a Muslim nation, they can fill in the gap and come and secure the Kabul airport and city of Kabul. However, and President Erdogan has been saying they are considering, but as Rahimullah Yousafzai Saab or probably Anwar Iqbal Saab was also saying, this is highly unlikely that eventually this is going to happen, because when the Turks weigh in the odds, and especially when the Taliban have clearly said, for us, even the Turks are outside forces. Everyone has to first leave, and then we'll talk about who can come in. So Turkey should not, and Turkey I think will not venture into this kind of misadventure. It's going to be a very, very costly affair for them.
Right.
Because Taliban are not going to spare them.
But if we are going to actually leave everything up to the Taliban, because they they seem to be setting the agenda within Afghanistan, is there any assurance that things will not actually devolve into some kind of anarchy? Because I remember even before 9/11, while they had taken over Kabul, in the Panjshir region, they never were able to actually take over. So it was essentially a civil war that continued for endlessly until 9/11 took place. So is it not true that then we are going to see the repeat of the same situation?
See, the anarchy part is going to be there. The reason is the Americans are leaving it half-hearted. They have not reached an agreement between the Taliban and the sitting Afghan government. Had they done that and left on a good note, where there was a coalition government or an all-parties government, then there was a less chance, because there would be a representative government from all factions. Right now, they're leaving for the Afghans to fight between themselves and control. And that is why you see Ashraf Ghani and Abdullah rushing to the United States to seek help. Now the thing is, this anarchy will remain there until whosoever is more powerful takes control. And that is going to continue, and probably the Americans also by design wanted this anarchy to stay there. Because they are leaving there.
But you cannot, as they say, you cannot have your cake and eat it too, right? Either you want them to leave, or you can blame them for anarchy. That actually results from their leaving. So there'll have to be some kind of understanding how things are going to actually proceed. Let me go back to Rahimullah Yousafzai Saab. Sir, so far we have talked about what happens in Afghanistan. Let me ask you to actually reassess the situation from Pakistan's point of view. If the US leaves and there is anarchy or crisis in Afghanistan, how is it going to impact Pakistan? What exactly will be the nature of things after September 11 or July 15, so to speak?
You know, after Afghanistan itself, the country most affected until now, and the country which will be most affected in future also will be Pakistan. So we have to be prepared for that. You know, we are the immediate neighbor, the longest border, and you know, there has been a free movement across the border. Now we are trying to fence the border. They are saying 80% of the work is complete, but even complete fencing will not stop some of the illegal movement. So then we have these refugees, 2.7 million or maybe even 3 million, who will not go back, and we get more refugees as well if there is a civil war. Also, you know, if there is anarchy and there is fighting in Afghanistan, Pakistan will be getting the blame as well, saying Pakistan did not stop the Taliban, Pakistan could have done that, Pakistan has the most influence on Taliban, which Pakistan did. And now it's not going to go away. So I think we have to be ready for the blame. We have to defend ourselves, our borders, you know, we have to keep trying to make progress in the, which is, you know, deadlocked. So I think that, you know, Pakistan has few choices in all this. We are under American pressure. Turkey is trying to, you know, to do things without even consulting Pakistan. Now, Foreign Minister Qureshi was able to talk about this issue, which Erdogan raised when he was in Turkey for that democracy forum. But I think that, you know, we have to make difficult choices. We cannot annoy China, Russia, and Iran by giving bases to the US. We also have to keep trying, despite all the past failures, to befriend the Afghan elite, the Afghan ruling elite, the Afghan government. They are very angry with Pakistan, and they believe Pakistan is still supporting the Taliban. Taliban also are a very difficult partner, by the way. You know, if somebody believes that Taliban will be Pakistan's proxies and they will do Pakistan's bidding, I don't agree with that. You know, once they are back in power, they will behave the way they behaved earlier when they were ruling the country, and they did not listen to Pakistan on many issues. On the issue of Osama bin Laden, on the issue of destruction of Banyan Buddhas, on delivering Riyaz Basra and other militants who had taken refuge in Afghanistan, on the issue of the Afghan trade, bilateral trade and transit trade. So we had many disputes even then, and we will have, you know, maybe even more disputes in future, because no country in the world is going to recognize an exclusive Taliban government. So if they capture power by force, I think they will become like outlaws or, you know, pariahs, and then Pakistan will be blamed as well. So we are going to face many challenges, and I think we have to be ready, because we do not want to be, you know, taken off guard.
Right. That is also, that is very important, sir. I was told that you had to leave early, so let me once again thank Rahimullah Yusufzai Saab for your valuable input and your time. I'm going to go back to Anwar Iqbal Saab, but before that, let me read to you tweets that have been put up there in the past 1 hour by Senator Lindsey Graham. And that is very important because, you know, he has domain knowledge and experience in foreign policy, and especially when it comes to Senate, he has been actually very vocal on Afghanistan as well. He says, stunning to hear that President Biden hasn't reached out to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, regarding the US-Pakistan relationship in Afghanistan. How do we expect our withdrawal from Afghanistan to be effective without coordinating with Pakistan? Clearly, the Biden administration believes that our problem is Afghanistan are behind us. Our problems in Afghanistan are behind us. And finally, I believe that the decision by the Biden administration to withdraw all forces are not to stay engaged with Pakistan is a major disaster in making, even worse than the blunder in Iraq. So this is Senator Lindsey Graham. Let me go back to Anwar Iqbal Sahab. Anwar Iqbal Sahab, I just read the tweet. I'm sure that you have also read it. You must have seen it. Is it going to have any kind of impact at all now on the US policy in coming days?
I think it will, because the Biden administration seems to have decided to stay engaged with Pakistan, but at a lower level. They do not want to bring in the president. But there are people in Washington who have started saying, I don't know if you remember or not, I did a story on that too some time ago during a Senate hearing. One of the senators also underlined this thing, and he also criticized the Biden administration's decision to ignore Pakistan during the Environment Summit. So, and he asked the same question, that how do you expect Pakistan to play a positive role in Afghanistan while you continuously ignore it on all important issues? So this is not just Senator Graham's statement, or his position, but there are other people in the United States, particularly in the think tank, also saying this. And Americans also realize we do have like informal discussions with them, because now that COVID-19 restrictions have relaxed, they do engage with us more often. And in those discussions, they also acknowledge that there can be no peace in Afghanistan unless and until there is peace between Pakistan and India, and something is done about the Kashmir issue. And that probably explains why Modi suddenly decided to invite Kashmiri leaders, etc. So that probably this is an effort to create some sort of situation which can be used to persuade Pakistan to move in, and indicating that, look, the Americans are playing their role to resolve the Kashmir dispute. So all sorts of efforts will be made, but I think the Americans also realize that Pakistan will not do two things. It will not go against the Taliban, because obviously, according to them, Pakistan has invested heavily on them, and Pakistan wants to keep Taliban on the positive side. And they also realize that Pakistan is not going to go against China. You saw in the Prime Minister's interview, the interviewer made several attempts to make him say something about the Xinjiang problem, but the Prime Minister avoided commenting on that. So they do understand that Pakistan is not going to do these two things. Pakistan is not going to go against the Taliban. Pakistan is not going to go against the Chinese. And therefore, I think my impression is the Americans also do not seem to know that totally confused that they want to have some peace in Afghanistan. They want to set up a government that is acceptable to all, but they don't know how to do it. Although they have one option open, which Ramullah Sahab also indicated, is to bring, if Taliban form an exclusive government, then they will use all their resources to make the rest of the world have no link, no relationship with that government, and they will also first try to pressure Pakistan not to recognize that government. And this time they probably will be more successful. The last time Pakistan, UAE and Saudi Arabia had diplomatic ties with the Taliban government. This time, if it is an exclusively Taliban government, then there will be no international, no other country will have any diplomatic ties with Taliban. That is probably the only option that Americans can use forcefully.
Right. That is really very insightful. Let me ask you one thing. Ambassador Sahab, it seems very clear that if Afghanistan falls apart, this whole idea of approaching Cold War between China and the US and perhaps with Russia, Afghanistan falling apart might actually help that thesis, because then it hardens the fault lines between these countries and these spheres of influence. But this concern has been quite visible for quite some time. At this moment, is there a possibility to find a way that this doesn't happen and all sides stay engaged regarding Afghanistan?
Well, that is only possible if there is a rapprochement between the Taliban and the Ashraf Ghani government, which seems an impossibility for the time being. Otherwise, as Anwar Iqbal has just rightly said, and US is going to make the Taliban life difficult at the international arena. They will not get the recognition. This is in fact, it would be difficult for Pakistan even to recognize the Taliban. If international community, they don't recognize, they refuse to recognize Taliban. So here I think Taliban will also have to be reasonable. While they may have military victories, but more than military victory, you have to have diplomatic victory as well. And it goes hand in hand. So perhaps what you may win in the battlefield, you may lose it at the diplomatic front. So this is a lesson which the Taliban should learn, that while they are advancing towards different parts of the country, so they should also be mindful of the fact that they are not an island. Or Afghanistan is not an island, so they have to be careful.
Right. While we are talking about this, do you want to very quickly comment on India's role, especially the reports that India might be actually talking to Afghan Taliban?
I think it should not be surprising. The reason being that Afghanistan is a reality, Taliban are a reality.